I'm Brodor from the podcast Why We Game, introducing Jason's conversation with Marc Macyoung. Marc has spent his life as a violence professional, first inflicting it and then later helping other professionals and regular folks like you and me to avoid violence. His upcoming book, Self-Defense Doesn't Have to Be Scary, deals directly with how parents and civilians can apply what professionals know to keep themselves and their families safe. If you haven't already, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. They help Jason keep bringing us great guests like Marc. And when you're finished, pop over to goinfo.org and check out my podcast, Why We Game, where we drill down into why fans go pro in the analog gaming hobby. Thanks for watching. Now let's see what kind of trouble Marc and Jason are going to get into.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Safest Family on the Block, where knowledge is power. I'm your host, Jason, and joining me today is Marc Macyoung. Hello, Marc.
Hello there. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here today. Now, folks who do read and move in martial arts and self-defense and security circles do not need an introduction to this man. He is a prolific author, someone who has lived a life immersed in violence for a very long time and managed to pull himself out of it. And now he works as a consultant about violence and security. He continues to write. He's just written a passel of books, a metric buttload of books, including titles like Street E&E, pool cues, beer bottles, and baseball bats back in his day. And for the longest time, he really wrote for that crowd, that security crowd, that martial arts crowd, that violence crowd. But he's got a new book coming out very soon where he's taken those lessons and applying it more to people who lived normal human lives. And could you tell us a little bit about this upcoming work?
Okay, the new book is called Safety Doesn't Have to Be Scary, Crime and Violence Avoidance. And it's basically understanding, first of all, it's not a self-defense book. Right up the front. I asked a question, again, right up in front, about, are you willing to use physical force to defend yourself? And either answer, yes or no. It's not a, well, maybe it depends. No, it's yes or no, right? Either answer is accepted. Okay, but what's weird is what comes after you make the answer. And that's what, and I say weird because if you say no, you have a certain set of requirements that will, certain doors open, certain doors close. Okay. One of the things, if you say no, is you can't walk up and to a Hell's Angel, explain to them what you think of them, and then slap them. That option is just no. There are certain behaviors you can't do anymore. If you say yes, there are certain responsibilities that come. And I still don't recommend slapping a Hell's Angel, by the way, just for the record. But the understanding that the answer send you in many different or in different directions, but at the same time, understanding how things lead to violence, what violence looks like, what crime looks like, right? Versus, oh, that's just another day in Portland. And by that, I mean the guy on the unicycle playing bagpipes and wearing a kilt, right? Okay, yeah, just, that's not dangerous. That's just normal for that place. It's recognizing threats, recognizing when something isn't a threat, and how not to escalate situations. So yes, it's about crime, but it's also about conflict.
And I feel like that's going to be especially useful for parents because as a parent, the last thing in the world you want is conflict. Even if you are armed, even if you have lived a life where you're good at violence, there's a 0% chance that I'm going to get killed if I avoid that circumstance, which means there's a 0% chance that my kid's going to grow up without a dad. Where
Right.
Even if it's me walking up with my 30 plus years of martial arts experience, walking up to a 19-year-old, 70-pound smartass, there's not a 0% chance he's going to kill me.
Anytime you engage in physical violence, there is a chance of somebody dying. Could you, it could be the other person. You can never, ever, ever take that off the table. It is always a possibility. So that should help adjust your decision to engage. Right? And I mean, a lot of stuff, like you haul off, you punch somebody, he falls down, cracks his skull and dies. You didn't mean to kill him, but you are responsible for his falling and cracking the skull. On the other hand, if you don't understand how things happen, you're vulnerable to intimidation, threat, bullying, and physical violence. So it's a real balance and understanding, but mostly it's recognizing what kind of situation you're in and what's the best answer given those circumstances.
Makes sense. It reminds me of a friend of mine who works in mental health, uses the term lag time. Where we all have these habits that are self-destructive. And it's lag time is the time period between when you start doing that script you have with your wife that ends up with a fight and the time you realize you're in the middle of that script and you knock it the heck off. And I feel that applies very well to this, where a lot of trouble comes when the trouble has started, but we don't know the trouble started. And the closer to when we see trouble starting, the more time we have to react, the more time we have to come up with options, and the better our chances are of getting to safety.
Okay, you tied two things together. That there is some relationship, but they are discrete enough topics or by themselves, and they're really interesting topics. Lag time, I have a saying which is mind the gap. Now, if you've ever been to England, specifically the London Underground, the Tube, you'll see these signs everywhere that says mind the gap. And basically, it's the gap between the train platform and the subway. And, you know, you have to mind the gap and step over it. Otherwise, like, your high heel will get stuck, right? Or you'll trip, you'll stumble. Minding the gap and going to your friend's term lag time, which is a really good term. Let me give you an example. It's going to seem a little off color, but bear with me. When humans meet, copulation is on their mind. Okay. And that means when you look at another person, you actually go through a fork in the road of copulate, yes, sex, no. Right. We actually, if we're married, if we're, you know, we're one particular sexual orientation or another, or we have taste about age, weight, et cetera, we go through that fork in the road, and it is a fork in the road so fast that we don't consciously recognize it. We automatically file it into no, right? The time we pay attention to that, the only time we notice it is when there's a yes. That's where we go, damn, right? But then, okay, we enjoyed the scenery. I'm married, back to no, right? So it's weird because there's often, as you talk about a lag time, sometimes our reaction is reflexive. Okay, we've learned it, but it happens faster than yes or no, or that split in the road. It's just automatic, boom. That can be a problem. Okay, and that bears very much into the other part. The thing is, you actually have time you have the ability between stimula and reaction. Okay, or actually, let me rephrase that, action. So somebody says something and you immediately feel insulted, you're going down without much lag time and you're set on a pattern. or a set of behaviors. But if you mind the gap and realize that just because I got the stimula, just because of, I had an emotional reaction, I don't automatically have to act that way. I could have misunderstood it. I could have double checked it. And I mean, I had a guy, long story short and really cleaned up. He said something that I grabbed him and I was about to hit him, and I saw a confused look on his face. And it was like, how are you confused that I'm about to hit you over this? Right? Well, it turned out that his use of the word was totally different than what I understood it as.
Huh.
Right? So it's like, okay, I know what that means in Yiddish. You're just being cool about using this word to mean something else. No, it means something very specific, and saying that to me was insulting. Well, finding out what the guy actually meant, which, by the way, really good conflict. You know how people will slide things in?
Yeah.
Right? They just kind of like, right? Well, when you actually find that I need to double check this, and you turn and say, excuse me, what did you just say to me? Right? A lot of times they'll back down from the zing, right? That they knew they did it, and they're just relying on you to pretend it didn't happen. Calling them out on it by asking them, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I heard you right. What did you say? And what did you mean by that? Okay, all of a sudden they're kind of revealed of like, I was really being not a nice person here. Right? So yeah, mind the gap is don't automatically fall into assuming you know what is happening. Also, don't automatically react without first checking.
And I see that being really applicable both to street safety kind of situations,
and
also just communicating with our teenagers.
Oh yeah. Just communicating anytime with anybody, right? We tend to reflexively go into our assumptions, right? And there's a lag time for getting our brain, our thinking part of our brain back into function, right? So it's like lag time is a really good way of describing this, of like, you're going to react emotionally quick. There's going to be a lag time before your brain kicks in, right? So there's all kinds of really wonderful things. That's a fascinating subject in and of itself. And, I'll also point out, a friend of mine summed it up very well. She goes, there are actually very few criminals, but the world is filled with people who will kill you for pissing them off. Right? And it's really, if you can control your emotional, if you can develop that lag time, if you can find the gap, you can, number one, keep from automatically reacting a certain way and triggering somebody, right? One of the best self-defense, personal safety, whatever you want to call it, strategies is a sincere apology. Right? If you've done something and somebody confronts you about it, right, and you go, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know, what are the rules in this environment? I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was being offensive, right? A sincere apology actually will get you out of more trouble. Okay. On the other hand, if somebody confronts me and I'm going my knee-jerk reaction, and my thought is, well, I'm sorry, that's not going to go. So, that's something that I'm addressing in the book, but it's that you don't always have, your knee-jerk reaction may not be the best one. Right. So that lag, and I mean, that is very important. And you can actually buy time by asking, what did you mean by that? Or, giving a sincere apology.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, I should also point out that giving a sincere apology doesn't mean wrongdoing, which is a lot of, well, what if he thinks I'm weak, and then there's always the idiot. Well, there are some people who think if you apologize, it's a sign of weakness. Right. Yeah. Hey, I can apologize and be ready to shoot you in the face. Right. So the thing is, I'm trying to be polite and following etiquette. And yeah, there's certain scripts that if I give certain cues and he gives them back, we're cool. Like, hey, I'm sorry. It's yeah, just don't do it again. Yeah, I understand. I won't do it. That is different than the guy who I say, hey, I'm sorry. And he goes, yeah, well, I still think I'm going to kick your butt. Okay. He just told me he's not following the social script.
Yeah.
Tells me this is not a normal situation, which doesn't, what if it doesn't work? See the touching again? Okay. Well, you know what? He just told you it's not working, so you better be ready to rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because this is a different game. He's not playing the game he's claiming to play. So all of that with your initial statement applies, right? And that's cool.
Today's episode is brought to you by Kurobia Martial Arts Supply. If you're a serious martial artist and you're tired of paying premium prices for high-end Japanese gear, Kurobia has your back. Kurobia was founded by a black belt expat for black belts worldwide. They carry a full range of gis from Hirota, Tokaido, and Tokyo-do International, as well as bags and books and other training supplies. They made my third Dan black belt back in 2002, the one I still wear to this day, and they've only gotten better since then. Use coupon code SAFEFAM to get 10% off your first order at Kurobia.com. They're a good company run by good people that offers good products at good value. Please do check them out. That's Kurobia.com, Kuroobiya.com. Tell them Safest Family on the Block sent you.
Okay. Years ago, I was teaching a class, and this little bunny foo-foo came up to me, and she goes, so what do I do if? Right? And I said, well, you do this, this, and this. And she goes, I couldn't do that. It's like, well, then you should do this. I couldn't do that. And I'm frustrated. And I snapped, well, then you better not get mugged. Right? And she goes, how do you do that? And without thinking, I said, you look for this, 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 and this. And she went, okay. And she walked away, and I was thinking, what a twit. Yeah. I turned, took one step, and said, what did I just say? Right? So I wrote it down. And that became the basis and foundation, whatever you want to call it, for the 5 stages of violent crime, which I did years and years ago. It's now like coming on 30 years old. Still works today. Mm-hmm. The difference is the 5 stages I now realize, are the last 15 seconds or less before you're looking down the barrel of a gun. Okay. What I've since done is, and I've talked about this in the book, is I've expanded it out to as much as possible. And we did some work and we did some testing, and we came up with, from the time you come on a mugger's radar to when you're looking down the barrel of a gun is about a minute. Right? Now, what happens out here is different than what happens here. The reason the 5 stages still work is that happens in the last, but all the stuff that's happening out here, that's where you have a lot of nonviolent options to avoid getting into that situation. You derail the process. I'll tell you a story. I was going to the pharmacy. Now, I live in a place that I am very proud that they do not need my skills, right? Very bad things don't happen. You know, I do things that I tell people don't do, like I leave my car unlocked, etc., because I know that the criminals around here would never stoop to stealing from a car. On the other hand, yours and 10,000 other people's retirement funds are open season. These people are not petty criminals around here, right? They're big time. But so I'm walking to the store, and there's a term I use called robbery spot. Okay, and that's where somebody who's going to rob you will wait. He'll position himself. He can see you. You can't see him that well, etc. But there's all these different signs. And I look over and I see a guy standing in a robbery spot. That's not normal, right? Because like smoking spots have to be 50 feet away from the door. You look and there's ashtrays, there's tables, right? There's all these people standing around smoking. That, dead giveaway. So it's like, well, he could be out there smoking. No, that's not a smoking spot, right? It's not where you stand when you're waiting for somebody either. Like when you're waiting for somebody, you're standing so when they drive up, you can see them. This guy is standing in a place where if you're coming out the door, you couldn't see him. Okay, so my little antennas were twitching on that one. And there's normal behaviors, real common normal behavior. This guy wasn't doing that. He was watching. So he came on my radar. I walked into the pharmacy, got my stuff. I come walking out. He's still there. Okay, so I got him checked. He's watching me. That's also not, I don't look good naked anymore. I know that, so I know I'm not getting checked out like, ooh, he's hot. So why is this guy watching me? Okay. So I get about 20 feet and I look over my shoulder and he's following. Okay. Now, I have never seen myself on the clock or angry, but I have been told I'm very, very scary when I switch, yeah. I'm walking along, I see him following, and I do remember saying something that, well, it could be a Southern girl, the "aw, hell no." Mm-hmm. It was a little stronger than that. But I flipped the switch and and I started turning. And by the time I got around, I swear this guy was like a white-tailed deer going, doing, doing, doing. I'm seeing the bottom. He never got within 50 feet of me. Right? But he changed his mind because I changed my personality, shall we say. And that's where we started playing, like, how long after you come onto this guy's radar? Like, let's use a parking lot scenario like this was. How long would it take for him to see you, follow you to your car, close the distance, and then pull the weapon? And with playing, I thought it was originally 2 minutes, but it turned out to be, it's like about a minute. Now, if you can spot this guy early and the stages of the process he has to follow, it's actually really easy to counter it without using violence. Right? The problem is there's a big difference between something came out of nowhere and I didn't see it until it was too late. See, so if your first idea that something is going wrong is you're loading groceries in the car and you look up and you're looking down the barrel of the guy's gun, it's too late. Okay, and the only options that work, and that's questionable, are way more extreme than looking over here and seeing this guy and go, I think I need to take a little evasive action. So,
and not just more extreme, but also as a parent, you don't want to be in that situation with a gun in your face and your kid right there.
Right. And the scenario that I just asked, famous firearms instructor doing a podcast asked me, she goes, well, what if I'm loading my grandchild in my car and I look up and a guy's got a gun on me? What do I do? It's like, you give him your purse. Right? Because looking down the barrel of a gun, I don't care how, and this is what really bothers me about the shooting world, they think they're going to be doing a quick straw thing. They're training for it. It's like, so basically you screwed up all this other time. You didn't see this guy closing or doing any of this other stuff. And now you think you're going to, quick straw this guy against, looking down the barrel of a gun? No. And I mean, I've watched videos. The only time somebody has ever beat with robbery scenarios that you will ever see somebody win against somebody who's got a gun out already is when the person with a gun is looking around trying to control the room, right? Is looking away and the person can pull the gun without being seen and shoot him. Or the other person with a gun comes in through another door in the direction the guy isn't looking. Those are the only two times I've ever seen successful drawing of a gun that's pointed against a gun like that. Right.
And here you're talking about experienced people who are familiar with guns, often firearm professionals, let alone a suburban dad who's carrying a bunch of Christmas gifts thinking about work.
Well,
and that brings to the whole story, that story, it hinges on, you saw this guy and you knew he was up to no good because of his location, because of his body language. And I think that's where a lot of parents who haven't had a lot of experience in that particular world need the most advice about what are some of the things that we can look for? What are some of the ways that we can increase our radar, as it were?
Yes, and okay, it's not just increasing the radar. Yay for that. Okay, big fan of increased radar. Also, by the way, let me take a side trip on that. Look for beauty. Right. I had a situation where I walked out, my wife and I were coming out of a doctor's appointment. And, you walked out of the doors and you were immediately in a drive path. And it was covered, but, I walked out, I looked, no cars, no muggers, no nothing, no cars, no muggers, no nothing. And then once I knew there was no danger, I relaxed and I smelt the breeze. I felt it and smelt it. And oh God, it's that glorious spring fresh on the breeze. It was a wonderful day. And I was like, oh yeah. And I mean, I went from any danger? Nope, no danger. Oh, isn't this cool? Right. So looking for beauty, looking for things that will lift your spirits.
You've been talking to Rory.
A little bit, yeah. But lift your spirits and, find beauty. Look for things that please you and bring you pleasure so you don't fall into the abyss. But the looking... And I mean, people say you must be aware or be alert. We need more words, right? Be aware of what? What what is dangerous? What is not dangerous? Most people don't know that. Okay. And Jenna Meek and I, in our book, What You Don't Know Can Kill You, about training, all the stuff that's not included in training. We came up with the NAD, normal, abnormal, dangerous. Okay. And you need to be able to spot normal so you can spot abnormal, so you can spot dangerous. Now, inherent with this, and this is also a really big part of this, is back in the old days, I used to go from 0 to 60 and nothing. But I was getting ambushed, things like that were happening. So I had to be able to just, most people need to take time to shift gears, mentally shift gears. Now, I'm a big advocate of code 1, code 2, code 3. Code 1 is heads up, we might have a problem, right? Code 2 is, yeah, we got a problem. I got to deal with this. I need to focus on this. Code 3 is it's going down, right? Doing the mental, and I'm dating myself here, or your European audiences will understand me. You're shifting gears. You're manually shifting gears. And that is what time does. That is your biggest advantage of you see something over there and it's not a danger, but you're still at code 1, or you go to code 1 because something ain't right about it. Then if as things develop, it goes to a code 2. So you're mentally shifting your gears to handle what's coming, right? Going from loading groceries to trying winning a quick draw, forget it. It's not going to happen, right? So, that's, like I said, when you talked about those two things and tied them together, yeah, there is some overlap, but they are distinct topics. And recognizing a developing danger, knowing that if it's going to be dangerous, this next thing will happen. If it's not dangerous, something else is going to happen. Okay, that one, and I mean, that's prior knowledge. That's being able to compare what you're seeing with what you know about what is dangerous. So like I said, me seeing that guy hanging out in the robbery spot, that told me something was off. And honestly, that would not have been my problem if I walked out and he was gone. Okay, he gone, no problem. Right. The fact that he was still there told me there was a situation. So code 1 was when I saw him waiting in a robbery spot. Code 2 was when I saw him following me. And that mental shift is actually what deterred him.
Okay. And that brings to mind, in general, the idea, like you were talking about before, I think that's very important, that the idea of being stressed out and on high alert all the time is not sustainable, even if you have kids, even if you don't have kids. And if you do have kids, you certainly don't have the energy to do that. But of just being aware, what Thich Nhat Hanh calls, being in the present moment, looking around, seeing the pretty, seeing the nice, and seeing the ugly, and seeing the dangerous,
right,
all at once.
Okay, I ask people when I'm teaching, and it's amazing the answers I get, and that is, how much time every day do you need to invest in being safe? Simple question, right? Now, when people go, you must always be aware, you must, be alert 24/7, I'm like, yeah, that must be really fun to sleep. And then I get after that, people, a couple hours a day, just said, realistically, you don't need to spend more than 2 minutes a day to ensure your safety. And by that, I'm talking about I don't know, looking both ways before you cross the street. Okay. Like walking out of the pharmacy, that was, I'm naturally going to look for traffic because I don't want to end up as a hood ornament. Right. And all it took was for me to turn my head a little bit more to see an area that I didn't normally see. So had he not been there, great. Same amount of time that it takes to look both ways as I'm walking. And I've got my safety. I know nobody's in the neighborhood, or in the area, so I can relax. When I walk up to my car before I start unloading and doing stuff, I look around again. Oh my God, there's a total of 4 seconds out of my day That is such a burden to keep me safe. I mean,
Lousy me. Whatever shall we do?
oh, frankly, Scarlett.
Yeah.
And it really is. I mean, it's not high impact, but it takes work beforehand. See, learning where somebody hide or will wait in a robbery spot, and to tell you the truth, they're not actually hiding. They're usually standing right out in the open, but they're standing over here. Like when you walk out in a parking lot, an underground parking lot, or not underground, or, parking structure, when you're coming out of the stairwells, you normally look towards your car, right? Standing right here. Okay. So when I step out that door and I'm looking like that, I don't see him. When I walk, he follows me. Okay. All it takes is a quick glance over there. I mean, I could even do my eyeballs. It's not hard to spot these guys. The work is learning how they operate, what the danger signs are of what they're doing. And if you think about it, really, how normal is it some guy standing in a parking structure in a place right next to the door that you don't normally look? No. But you learn that, so when you do see it, it's like, I need to pay attention to this. And that's one of the biggest problems is people actually see the guys and they blow them off. So, again, this idea of this book is not to say you have to be totally aware, totally alert all the time. You have to be ready, carry 27 knives and be ready to defend yourself at all times. Once you can spot it earlier, you have options that are not physically violent. Okay. And if the situation pops up and it's more firmly developed, this ain't kosher. That this didn't accidentally happen. Right. So you know where to shift into, yes, code 1, code 2, code 3. I got this from the LAPD, and they used to use code 2 high, which is code 2 is you have a problem. Pay attention. I mean, like, nothing else matters right now. Focus on it. Code 2 high means it is really close to going down. It hasn't kicked off yet, but the options you have, a lower code 2 is way different than the mindset and the options you have at code 2 high. So, one of the things that, as a bouncer, used to do that. One of the things I would escort people out. I really tried to be polite. I really tried not to insult, or I tried to give them no reason to come back. Well, every now and then you got an idiot. He was going to do it. So the thing is, if I've escorted somebody out 3 hours earlier, and at the end of the night, I'm walking along and he steps out from behind the dumpster. Okay, that's code 2 high because he didn't accidentally get there, right? And I know this, so I can explain why I used the higher level of force that I did, right? That gets I'm not going to go, hey, what are you doing here? I mean, when this guy steps out of the shadows in that place, I know what he's doing. There is no doubt in my mind about this behavior is a setup. So I'm going to respond according to that level of threat rather than, oh, what are you doing here? Da-da-da-da. No, the time for polite is past.
That brings up an important thing, I think, for a lot of parents, which is a great many parents out there, you have special middle class parents. The last time they got into a fight was in a locker room in ninth grade. You see a lot of police reports where it's code 2, even code 2 high, and they're still convincing themselves that everything's okay.
Thank you for watching today. I hope you found something useful or maybe even inspiring. If you liked what you saw, please take a few minutes to subscribe, like, and comment. Those little things add up to big help for the channel. If you loved it, consider checking out our Facebook page for more family safety news and information. And think about supporting us on Patreon, where you'll get early access, monthly training resources, blooper footage, and other exclusive benefits. You'll find links to both in the show notes. Most of all, thank you for being part of the safest family on the block team. Stay safe, everybody. See you next time.